And this is affordable and sustainable. Cellular has won. There are hotspots with the Wi-Fi, but cellular is so powerful. There's so much money involved in this networking stuff that they weren't going to let the Wi-Fi happen. And what's happened is cellular is the dominant technology. And as we move forward over the next 10, 15 years, it's still going to be cellular. It's 24/7, it's everywhere. We heard yesterday about the digital divide and about having a cell phone in their hands. And if you put one of these in the children's hands, then at home, 24/7, they have an ability to answer their own questions. That's unprecedented. It's never happened before, that every child can answer their own questions. Now let's talk money. Usually you're used to paying $1,000, $1,500, a bunch of money for a computer. Computers are free. Computers are free. You heard it. Computers are free. You pay for the network. You pay in the US between $13 and $30 a month for a data plan. I'm not talking about voice. I'm talking about a data plan. And the rates are falling. And then you have to, we'll talk a little bit about this in a second, you have to put some educational software on here. You have to put software, that's going to cost. If you think about it, if you could have a phone, a computer, a network, and educational software for about $10 per child per month, that number you could say would be sustainable. Now, again, the global south is going to have problems with that number. But certainly in the global north and developed nations, $10 per kid per month is affordable. Millions. Overnight, this would change education because millions would get sold and bought. Overnight. Again, I'll repeat it because it's such a bizarre idea. This is free. You pay for the network. You don't pay for computers anymore. From here on in, you don't pay for computers.
So we're talking about technology again. In the words of the children, what do they say? One of the boys in 6th grade said, "This is the way school should be." That was when they came in, the day they delivered their devices. And school was going to change for that group of children. And we're not talking about the elite children. We are talking about rural schools where they don't have connectivity. They're going to cellular because they don't have Wi-Fi. They know they can't afford to outfit their buildings with Wi-Fi, but they do have cellular. And this is what the one child said. Another one in another district, and this one was incredible. They were having a session where the children were teaching the technology coordinators from the surrounding rural districts. And they were showing them what they were doing, how they could be used effectively in school. And at the end of the session, one little slip of a boy raised his hand and asked if he could say something. And he timidly stood up and he said, "I just want to thank all of the adults in this room who are responsible for giving us this opportunity to learn with these smartphones." And teachers kind of looked around at each other, the adults looked around at each other, and there were 2 other boys in the back room who said, "Way to go, Jake!" And this little boy, they told us later, is not one of the haves. He's one of the have-nots. He's not a child who goes home to everything. He really sees the opportunity that he has, the connection that he has to the world. We saw a CNN video just the other day that they made in one of the schools where children were using technology 24/7. And one of the girls said, "Now that I've got this, I can go onto the web and do interesting things instead of just texting all the time." They text all the time because that's what they can do on their phone. But if you give them something more interesting, they take the opportunity to do it. One of the tech coordinators in a high school in New York, his school board wanted him to get netbooks for the children. And when he asked the students what they wanted, they said cellular. They wanted the smartphones instead. Why? Because they're not lugging something. It fits into their pocket. The opportunity to use it is when it's not something that they're intentionally carrying. What do you carry in your pocket? When you leave the house, you have 3 things with you always. What? Money, keys, and your phone, right? Now, again, Elliot said it. These are not phones. The only thing the students have activated on these devices is the data plan. No voice, no texting, data only, and they're still excited about having it with them all the time. We've got a 2-year longitudinal study going in Singapore with Nanchao Primary. And they started, Singapore is very, very conservative about their education. And they don't want to do anything that interferes with those test scores because they score very high on TIMSS and PISA. So they don't want to mess that up. So they told us, well, 3rd grade, it's for 3rd graders and 4th graders. And it was in science. They said we could start with one subject. So they gave us a science teacher who had no training in science whatsoever. She didn't like science. She was a primary school, but a primary teacher, but she didn't have any training in science per se. And this was the first year that the students had science. So she had children who were using these devices 24/7. They had data plans 24/7 for the children. And at the end of the first year, now that meant her teaching had to be completely different. We helped her take the content that she was supposed to be doing and present it on the devices, complete lessons in a different way, where everything was interactive, where the children are learning about mold. Okay, before you get back here, I want you to find pictures of mold, and let's look at all the different kinds of molds there are, and we'll discuss it in class tomorrow. Bottom line was, last November was the end of the first year of that experiment. It's continuing this year. The children moved to 4th grade. But at the end of 3rd grade, the 3rd grade class that had these devices 24/7 outscored all of the other children in their 3rd grade in that school significantly. And the other children were using the traditional worksheet model and content. The only thing that changed, now even the teacher has moved to 4th grade because they're going to continue to study those children. And they did interviews. They picked 6 children from the lowest to the highest socioeconomic group in the school. And they interviewed the parents every month to see, what do you see? And the child who's on the lowest end of the socioeconomic spectrum is a child whose mother is a stay-at-home mom, and she only speaks Chinese. His father is a taxi driver in Singapore. They allow the children to use YouTube, which they don't in many places in the United States. This little boy's father is an avid fisherman. So what the child did was go to YouTube, and he found every video about marine life, about fish, about fishing, and he shared them all at home with his father. His mother says he is now the source of their information. When she has a question, she knows to ask her grade 3, her primary 3 child, because he knows where to find the information, where to get the answer for her. His position in that family has changed significantly because of the power that he has in his hand. So, Nanchao, we're seeing the same thing in schools in St. Mary's of Ohio, and in districts there. Scores are going up. Katy, Texas, the same thing. Scores are going up. Why? It's not rocket science. If you're a teacher, you know why. It's called time on task. It's very simple. The children like the way they're learning. They have lots of ways to interact with the technology. And that's what all it amounts to. They are becoming active learners. They can find their own information. They get the information, they bring it to school, they discuss it with their classmates and with their teacher. They sort it all out, but they don't sit like little birds waiting to be fed. They're not helpless anymore. It's nothing but time on task.
So, why does it work? Why does mobile learning work?
Mobile learning works because the model that we have seen, or the model that we know up until now, looks something like this. It's called supplemental learning. How do we primarily use technology in the schools? It is to supplement the regular lesson.